This chapter describes Jacob and his family moving down to Egypt, and it also provides us with a genealogy of Jacob's family. It finishes with Joseph explaining what to do when Jacob and his sons are introduced to Pharaoh. Chapter 46, verse 1. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "I am the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I'll make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I'll also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will close your eyes." Now, Jacob was hesitant about going to Egypt because his grandfather Abraham in Genesis 15 had been told to stay away from there. Moreover, God had also warned Isaac in Genesis 26 not to go there. They stop at Beersheba, where Jacob offers sacrifices to God on an altar, probably on the one that had been built by his father Isaac. Jacob knows from what his father and grandfather had told him that going down to Egypt was a bad idea. Now, God visits Jacob by a dream in which he gives Jacob and his family the green light to proceed on to Egypt. It's okay now. Even more, God promises that he'll go down with them and he'll also personally bring them back again. Now, some scholars believe that Jacob, like all other people of that time, believed that God and the pagan gods for the other people only commanded a limited territory. If that is true, then Jacob may have worried that God, Yahweh, would not go with him into Egypt. Finally, he mentions that Joseph will close his eyes. It was the responsibility of the closest members of a family to close the eyes of the deceased. We read in chapter 50 that when Jacob died, Joseph embraced and wept upon him again, and so Joseph was a family member who closed the eyes of his father. Verse 5. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their livestock and their property, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons, his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. The entire group of people who made up Jacob's family pack up and proceed down to Egypt. They left nothing behind. Here we learn that Jacob had, quote, daughters and granddaughters. This will be important for figuring how many people moved down to Egypt. Verse 8. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben, Hanok and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin and Ohad and Jachid and Zohar and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath and Merari. The sons of Judah, and Onan and Shelah and Perez and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola and Puvah, and Lob and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jaliel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All his sons and his daughters numbered 33. This is a list of all the sons and grandsons whom Leah bore to Jacob, a total of 33 sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons, plus one daughter, Dinah, who is named. Now, if you'll see in that last verse, it says daughters, but we only get the name of one. We learn that two grandsons, and Onan, died while young. Jacob also has two great-grandsons, Hezron and Hamul, through Leah. Other daughters are not listed or counted, but there must have been a large number of them also, probably similar to the number of sons and grandsons. Jacob's sons could not go up to Haran to get wives or go to the family of Esau for them. Those routes had already been shut down with the trouble in Haran and then the kind of tense meeting of Jacob and Esau earlier that we studied. They're also not allowed to take the wives from among the Canaanites, although we read here that Simeon did have a son of a Canaanite woman. That was a violation. Therefore, their wives must have been chosen from among their sisters and cousins. The law against such marriages had not been given because the human gene pool had not yet become too contaminated by mutations. Verse 16, the sons of Gad, Ziphion and Haggai, Shunai, Esbon, Eri, Arodai, and Ariali. The sons of Asher, Imnah, and Ishva, and Ishvi, and Beriah, and their sister Sarah. The sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Leah, and she bore to Jacob these 16 persons. The sons and grandsons Jacob gained through Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, totaled 16. Again, we find that just one of the sisters is named, Sarah, but there were certainly more. Verse 19, the sons of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Now to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, and Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all. Jacob, through his wife Rachel, gained a total of 14 sons and grandsons, and the number of daughters is not given here either. However, in this case, with only 2 sons, if there had been a daughter, it may be because Rachel was the favorite wife that a daughter would have been mentioned. So possibly in this case, there weren't any daughters from Rachel herself. Verse 23, the sons of Dan, Husham. The sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, Gunai, and Jezer, and Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Rachel, and she bore these to Jacob. There were 7 persons in all. Jacob had 7 sons through Bilhah, Rachel's handmaiden, and again, no daughters are mentioned. Verse 26, all the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. So, how many actually came down to Egypt? We have the 70 mentioned above, plus the 4 wives, plus an unknown number of daughters besides the 2 mentioned here earlier, plus Jacob himself, equals at least 75 known people, plus the unknown number of daughters, plus an unknown number of servants that they had gained from Shechem. And once they're in Egypt, we need to add Asenath, Joseph's wife, to the list of this large family. Now, a conservative estimate is at least 200 people. With so many people all totaled, why is there so much focus on just 70? The 70, or 75 if we add Jacob and the 4 mothers, represents the head of the 12 tribes and the major families within the tribes, represented by the grandsons and great-grandsons. Now, about the discrepancies between the genealogies and Genesis here in Numbers 26, such discrepancies have been a favorite target of attacks by unbelievers. So how do we deal with this? A major purpose of biblical genealogies is to identify important leaders. In Genesis 46, the list is included in order to identify the future tribal leaders in the nation Israel. This is why some of the names listed in this chapter identify those who had not yet been born, such as the great-grandsons who were born in Egypt. They're called Mishpachoth, the founders of families within the 12 tribes. This also shows that the genealogy here was not yet complete when they entered Egypt. We probably see here some editing done by Moses 400 years later. The genealogy of the tribe of Benjamin has a lot of problems due to the calamity that happened to them described in Judges 20, where nearly all the male members of that tribe were slaughtered by the other tribes. However, after the Benjamite king Saul arose, their genealogy became clearer. The Septuagint added the names of 5 grandsons, bringing the total of 75, which is what Stephen in Acts 7:14 quoted before he was stoned to death. So there was an addition there, not that Stephen misquoted. He was using the Septuagint rather than the Masoretic text here. This was done to help align the genealogy with others that were recorded later, such as what we find in Numbers 26. Okay, the bottom line here is the genealogies found in the Bible are never put together at random. There is always a specific purpose for each, and it's identified by the context. Verse 28. Now he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out the way before him to Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. Then Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I've seen your face, that you're still alive." Joseph rides up to meet his father and family near Egypt's border so they would not cause problems by going on down into Egypt. And they have a special place set aside for them, the land of Goshen. Judah is appointed to be the leader who will go down before them into Egypt and find Joseph. This shows that he now holds the position of firstborn, even though he has 3 brothers who are older than he is. Simeon and Levi slaughtered the Shechemites over the incident with Dinah and Shechem. Reuben, quote, went in unto Bilhah as a direct attempt to take over leadership of the family. It failed, by the way. Jacob decided that none of these 3 sons would be counted as the firstborn, so that title was transferred to Judah. The first 3 brothers had shown an ignorance of and disrespect for God's ways. They probably reminded Jacob of his brother Esau, and he decided he didn't want any Esau's, quote, to become the head of the family after he was gone. Judah had also caused some problems, but his full act of repentance regarding Joseph, plus his willingness to take full responsibility, weighed in his favor. It says he fell on his neck. Most commentators believe that Joseph embraced his father, but some argue that it was the other way around, that Jacob embraced his son. There is a little bit of ambiguity here, but it really doesn't matter. Nevertheless, the embrace lasted for a long time. It's been a long time since Jacob and Joseph have seen each other. Jacob says that he's now satisfied with his life because he's been reunited with his long-lost son, Joseph. We could say now that he can check off one of the items on his bucket list. Notice that Jacob is named Israel in verse 30. He has finally become a man of strong faith. Now, most of us are like Jacob, now known as Israel. It can take a long time for us to reach maturity in faith, and the current COVID-19 threat is another test of faith for us. But here is where I want to read my favorite verse to you, Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Verse 31. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may live in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians. Okay. Joseph instructs his father and his brothers on how to meet with Pharaoh. They can't just walk up and say hi. He explains how they shall identify themselves as shepherds who have long worked with livestock. This meant more than just sheep and goats. It included cattle, asses, and probably a few camels also. The Egyptian people loathed nomadic people groups, especially since their current pharaoh was one of those, quote, deplorables of that time. As the Hyksos had invaded Egypt and taken over the government, this would only exacerbate their hatred of the Hebrews later on. Now, some history. Joseph made the Egyptians pay for their own grain during the famine. They didn't appreciate that. They had to sell their land, they had to sell their homes, their cattle, other things in order to get the food. However, this basically really enriched Pharaoh, and it probably added to the animosity toward the Israelites later during the time of Moses. So let's look at some of the things we've learned from this chapter. God is continuing to take care of his chosen people through many providential acts. The focus on shepherds is important in that it reveals why the Israelites were so readily accepted into Egypt. The leaders of Egypt at that time were Hyksos kings, also called pharaohs in Egypt, who did not share the deep prejudices against nomadic people that the Egyptians held, since they were also descended from Shemitic people groups. I didn't say Semitic, it's Shemitic. I'm emphasizing Shem here. We should not expect the genealogies listed in the Bible to be exactly aligned, since that's not their purpose. Each genealogy is designed to align with the narrative in which it's found. Jacob, now referred to as Israel, has finally become a man of strong faith in Yahweh. His old selfish ways are now gone. So next week we have chapter 47. I'll see you then.